It just sets the mood.
This is like what I expect to hear when I'm like driving to work with like my coffee and I'm like trying to get psyched up, like catch up on the latest trends for like the day. Oh, I love it. Spot on.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
Do you have a hype up routine?
Oh, for what? What context?
Going into work.
Just going into work. Yeah. Well, with a newborn kid, that just includes getting up and like taking a shower and brushing my teeth, and then kind of like the slap 1, 2, 3. Drink a lot of coffee. Drink enough caffeine until I can see through walls, and then I'm about ready to go at that point. Because then you have to remember my new routine since COVID is like do all of that and then walk 5 paces to the back room and get started. So there's no great way to like have a commute ceremony, when it all includes, getting ready in my little house of 1,000 square feet. Yeah. So yeah, that's about it up to this stage. But.
Do you wear any specific clothes or anything to signal that it's work time?
Ooh, this is something I'm a big believer in. And I think you were actually the one who got me into this, where talking about like having that jersey you put on for the day, right? And I think for those who, I don't know if Bryce these days is the same Bryce that I knew a few years ago, but always dressed to the T, always wearing the nice button-up shirt, right? Yeah. I have caught myself wearing the sweatpants and the T-shirt, or like the nice shirt with the sweatpants, so that I look like I'm more put together. But there's something special about when you actually like get ready for the day and you're like, all right, I'm like a working professional now. I'm not just like dad lounging at home on my computer. Like I'm doing good world-changing work now.
Yeah.
I'm dressed for the part. So I'm a big believer in that personally. How about you?
Yeah, love it. The other day I was on an internal meeting with my team, and then we had a client call, 10 minutes later, or not. I guess it was back to back. It ends at the top of the hour, and then you go on the client call. Mm-hmm. And I showed up to the client call with a blazer on. Yeah. And then my colleague was messaging me like, "Do you just keep a blazer like in your office next to you all the time?"
Yes.
Yes.
Always.
Is that crazy? No, I think
absolutely not.
Normal. Yeah. No, I love it. I like having things that tell you it's time to work, and then you just focus in on it. And then when you switch into casual clothes. And then also with having kids and working from home, I've noticed that they're picking up on the signals too. Like there are shoes that I have, and my kids will be like, "Oh, Daddy's going to work.
Dad's got his work shoes on.
He's got the work shoes." And then I also I'll use a cologne when I go out to work. Like I go all senses when I'm in work mode. So I also do scent. And so
you have to.
My kids, if they smell it, they're like, "Oh, Dad, where are you going to? Which are you going to Grand Rapids for work?"
I smell work, Dad. Yeah, I smell work, Dad, in the house. No, I think that's actually critical. You actually bring up a good point about the work jersey, the work uniform. Not only is it a mental cue for myself, but that's actually something I've been thinking about a lot since we had our first child, which is how do I present myself in a really good way for him, not only for my work colleagues, my teammates, but also like, how do I put on a professional air for him, even if it's a little bit of kind of, it's kind of like putting on a costume for him a little bit, but also it's like, hey, my dad looks like a professional. He looks like he does something important, which I think has this kind of, nice effect in my own mind, knowing that, hey, if he's watching me and I feel professional, like that makes me do better work as a result. So it's kind of funny how that works, but I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's a whole new motivation. I want to ask you more about that in a moment. But the other, to put a bow on that one with the, doing this for the kiddos, since I've been doing the podcast and it goes on Spotify, it goes on all these different platforms on YouTube. Now my TV will like recommend content, and it'll be me, and my kids will be like, "Hey, Dad, that's you."
Oh, that's amazing. So that's incredible.
I'm not a celebrity at all, but in my house, I feel like a little celebrity. That's awesome.
So. That is okay. If nothing else, I mean, the fact that your significant other, your kids, they can be like your biggest cheerleaders, especially when you're doing something that offers no gratification from anyone else. That's got to be just the best feeling in the world.
It does feel good. Oh, I feel like a giant at home, and I love that.
It's amazing.
I am like literally the tallest person in my house. I leave the house, I'm not, but
same,
right? Like
same.
I'm the strongest. I'm the tallest. I'm the smartest. It feels good.
Well, you have to explain really quick too for those who cannot see us right now. I mean, we're both relatively vertically challenged men. Me at 5'8" on a good day, and you at whatever.
Yeah, don't have to disclose.
I wear like a suit of armor, man.
Well, actually, I asked Evan to set up the cameras with forced perspective. So right now,
you're looking down on me. Yeah. Okay, I see.
So we Evan, that's a note for the future. If we could get comically small props around so that we just look huge, I'd like that.
Yeah, we'll do what they did in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Forced perspective for sure. We'll just have you sit way closer to the camera than your guests, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Genius. I love it.
Yeah. Do the opposite of what they did for the hobbits. Whatever they did for the elves and the men.
Just reverse it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by City Innovations. City Innovations is a venture studio located in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but they serve people all over the world. If you've got an idea that you want to bring to market and you're not sure if you're building the right thing or if you are selling to the right people, consider talking to City Innovations. They'll help you validate that idea and make sure you're doing the right thing. Find City Innovations at cityinnovations.com or search City Innovations anywhere on socials. I know you're still very early in the fatherhood game, but career-wise, or just maybe other life things, what have you noticed switched in your head since having a kid, or if anything has switched?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's inevitable when you have your first kiddo and there's this moment where, they come into the world and you're like, oh dang, this is not just me anymore, right? And even when you get married, there's a certain sense of that, right? For anyone who's married or is in a long-term committed relationship for that matter, there's a sense of, okay, like there's a +1 to me now, right? I can't just, eat ramen all day and work until 10 p.m. every single day because I have to nurture this relationship. And then it just adds that element of responsibility on top of it where not only do you need to obviously nurture that relationship with your child, you need to take care of them, right? You need to be there for them. But what I also think is the flip side of that, right, is there's the responsibility aspect, which I think is the motivation for a lot of people to kind of quit on their dreams, right? I work the 9 to 5 for my kids, right? There's also that element where I do believe we as parents have a responsibility to also inspire our kids. So, for me, that looks like not only doing work that I'm really passionate about, but also remaining true to my hobbies and my wife and all these things that I love to do before he came along, right? To show that, you can have, the best of all worlds, right? You need to do it responsibly and everything in moderation. But I think there's that element that kind of flipped in my own mind, when he came into the world. But as a more experienced father, how about you? Has it been more of a journey for yourself as you've gone along? Or, I mean, have you kind of evolved since originally having kids for the first time?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the biggest shifts in my mind has been moving from a starter mindset to a finisher mindset. For the first time in my life, I really wanted to complete things and just be done with them and do them to a higher degree of quality, and which was really weird. And then also the provider mindset kicked in too. It's like, I want to take care of everyone around me for as long as possible and just have things work. Like, that's when you get the life insurance and you do, right? Those types of things. You finally start thinking about those things. Like, you think about a longer time horizon. There's been, it was definitely a switch that flipped right when it happened. See, we need to get a cough button in here so that when people have to cough or sneeze, they can just.
No, I just turn away. I just turn away.
It was good.
Yeah.
You're a pro at this. I really like it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. What are the hobbies then that are keeping you busy?
Well, it's funny because, after living in Michigan for a while, after graduating from college, obviously we were super scrappy living in Michigan, doing that whole thing. My hobby was work and my life was work and everything we did was work, which I loved. And I think I still have that side of me. But I think, after that, I actually moved out to, Denver, Colorado, where every good, Midwest white male who thinks he's being adventurous moves to Denver. Is like, oh, look at me, I'm having this big adventure, right? Loved it. I mean, because I'm a big ski bum at heart. So I moved out there. That's where I ultimately met my wife, but also, had all these hobbies, whether it be mountain biking, skiing, all this kind of stuff. And so carried that back with me, right? So trying to not only, still obviously, I say this honestly, one of my biggest hobbies is like learning about technology products, building technology products, but also making sure that, hey, I still love to go mountain biking, still love to go skiing, even if it's much smaller here in Michigan. Still love to get outside for the the beer league Wednesday race night, right? Even though I'm super slow. Yeah. But on top of that too, adding just hanging out with kiddos and learning how to be still a little bit more, because I'm a hobby collector. And like you said, finishing things, finding things you're really passionate about, really trying to work on just being still with my kiddo and my wife now too. So all that kind of plays into that work-life balance. But
that's awesome. So something I have to get into with you and the world needs to know about you is like you're my favorite maker in the world.
Oh,
you
high praise.
You are highly talented at just going from nothing to something, and not in like the duct tape and popsicle stick type of way, but it's like a high quality functional thing that you can make very quickly. So, I don't want you to bias this answer because of things we worked on together, but in your life, what do you think is like, what's the thing that you've made that you're most proud of? And maybe I'm going to force you to not talk about the thing we worked on. We can talk about the thing we worked on together later, but
of course.
Outside of what you do, what's the coolest thing that you've made, John Boss has made?
Oh man, that is such an open-ended question. Again, aside from the compulsory answer of my child, but so I say that to cover my bases, and obviously what we worked on, I do truly count that as one of the coolest things that we took from 0 to 1 was what we worked on. We'll talk about that. But man, that's a good question. I have to think for a second. There's so many ways to take that. I mean, whether it be something that I built, right? I'm really proud actually of, I think some things I even did in college where, learning how to perform research in a really, professional way, right? Like being able to establish like a hypothesis and knowing that not even your PI, your principal investigator, your professor has all the answers for you, and learning how to find those answers through testing and observation and all these amazing things. That's, I think, still one of my proudest achievements there. I think another one of mine, which I'm actually really proud of still too, is, when I went out to Denver and I started working for this company out there, we saw a clear gap in the market, for the need for a kind of like a small contractor, construction contractor. I worked for a construction technology company, a little background there, where we automated things like bulldozers and excavators, right? And my job role said, hey, you need to look after your product manager for these specific products, right? But as through doing that, I realized there's this clear gap, but there wasn't any funding to build this product that I really thought needed to be in the world, right? So me and a few other engineers, because we thought it was a good idea, just started building this scrappy prototype, right? Using some things that were around the office. And I give this company a lot of credit because they had these kind of innovation spaces where you could just kind of piece together solutions and stuff. And that was also a really cool thing because that product actually just launched as an official product for this company. I think it was a few months ago. It just launched as like an official product that we started as pretty much like a scrappy hackathon style thing. So I think it's really hard for me to answer that because I love all these little things in different ways, right? Okay. And so, and I think that's actually why that's one of my most toxic traits too, is that like I don't pin my reputation on any one thing. It's always like there's always the next thing, right? Yeah. There's always that next thing. So it's hard to answer, but those are just a few examples.
I'll give you a couple constraints to maybe get some to narrow the field for you because you've made so many things. What's your favorite thing you've built in one day?
Ooh, man, I got to think back. Built in one day.
You've made a bunch of little widgets and gizmos.
I've made a bunch of little things.
Designed, prototyped a lot of things.
Yeah, man, that's so tough. That's so tough.
That's all right. You can think about it in the background cycles. We can go on to some other things.
Yeah, let me think about though. Maybe I'll just kind of blurt something out randomly in the middle of some other thought that I have. So just let me come back.
Okay, you totally can. All right. Well, do you want to talk about the drone stuff at all? Do you want to get that captured?
Hey, I mean, if you feel like it's valuable, we can talk about it. I think it was pretty formational for me, as kind of set the tone for some of what I'm doing in my career now. But I mean, not something we need to dwell on either.
Yeah. Oh, well, what I want to save for another conversation, probably an inebriated conversation, is the like the war stories of the things that were just difficult and in the trenches.
Yes.
Because that was definitely one of the most formative experiences in my whole like entrepreneur career was what we went through, especially towards the end of Fathom Drone. But the let's talk about the 0 to 1 process a little bit and how you made the drone, approached it, and I'll if you want to give the context about what Fathom Drone was, if you want to talk about that, and then I want to get into just like how you went from concept to making something.
Yeah, totally. So just a little bit of background on this. So this, I give full credit to one of, our co-founders. His name is Danny, right? He's the one who came up with the idea originally. we're all in college, right? And we all went home for the summer and all just big into just outdoorsy stuff. And I'm a big scuba diver. I have something just like this weird passion about everything underwater, right? I still do to this day. I'm still making little weird gadgets and stuff for underwater exploration, right? We can talk about some of those later too.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. You have like jet boots and stuff you made.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to be another story that we can touch on. There's a lot to unpack there as well. But so just kind of the classic, entrepreneurial, light bulb went off in his head of saying like, okay, this was when DJI was really kicking off too, right? Just drone technology in general was like, this is a thing now, right? For the retail market, for average consumers to own a drone or a aerial robotics system. So we said, okay, the market is pretty saturated by DJI already, and we can't compete with a lot of these overseas competitors just based on their prowess for building hardware and the speed in which they can build it. So we said, well, what if we took it a different angle and we looked at underwater robotics? And we said, well, this is a really interesting idea because normally, you either have to be able to hold your breath long enough to get down there, or you have to be able to spend a few thousand on scuba equipment, which obviously not everybody can do. So we said, well, what if we could take the same principle that applies to aerial technologies where, we can't fly, so build a robot that can and live vicariously through it, right? Do the same thing, but for underwater. So let's build an underwater robot that you can control with like your smartphone or a controller, and allow customers to experience that amazing ecosystem that is so out of our normal everyday view, right? It's this kind of eye-opening experience for a lot of people when they see what's down there, even in like the Great Lakes here in Michigan. So I think that the kind of genesis of the idea definitely came about there. I was immediately a believer because I'm just a big nerd. I love to build technology products, as you said, and I love scuba diving. So I was like, all right, game on, let's build this thing. So I think what's really interesting for young kind of technology or technically focused people is that you immediately jump to building, right? Which we very much did. And that is a big no-no, right? For most ideas, you want to turn into a business. And this is, again, entrepreneurship kind of 101. It's product management 101. It's kind of fundamental for building a great business in a lot of ways is, never jump to build something, right? It's so exciting to build things and do it if you want to maintain that excitement. I would never want to tell someone, hey, don't just go start building things, because I think that's an amazing experience. But always just start asking around, right? Figure out ways that you can validate that idea, and you can kind of pound the pavement and say, okay, like, how can we gauge, market interest for this idea, for this thing that we want to build, right? Which this sounds really easy in principle, but it's really hard to get people excited as you are. So what are some creative ways that you can go about testing your hypothesis? That is, hey, I think people would like this underwater drone technology. We think it's awesome. So I'm gonna back everything I say by saying we ignored all of that and we immediately started building, which is what I knew how to do because I was an engineer, an undergrad engineer at the time. And so, so immediately, I get super psyched about this thing. And as you know, Bryce, when I get excited about something, I can't stop thinking about it. Mm-hmm. I get obsessed with it. If I'm into it, it's all I want to do. And so I requested space in our senior design lab as a sophomore in college, and they granted me that access. Like, all right, crazy, go have at it, right? Use the 3D printer, use, some of the scrap pieces that we have over there. And through just a lot of just furious research that, thank God for the internet, I was able to just kind of see, okay, how could we translate this technology that had been reserved for research organizations and police departments and all this stuff in more classic research, ROVs they're called, remotely operated vehicles, and translate that into something that's affordable and easy to use, which then started to guide the implementation process. So that's kind of where the 0 to 1 started. And then, as you know, it was just a long ass journey to get to the point where we actually had something that worked. So,
yeah, it was, it did take some time. Yeah, you said if you get something in your head, you have to see it through. And yeah, if John Boss has an idea for something, it will exist in the world through force or one way or another. It will
make
exist.
It happen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I, stepping away from the business model for a little bit, which was there were fundamental flaws there, looking only at the technology. What do you think was the biggest mistake along the way with the technology? Was there like a foundational flaw? Was there something is there something you would have done differently with the technology, or how, not the technology, how it was made now that you have more wisdom?
Yeah. Oh, a million things. I mean, a bajillion things, right? I mean, I think fundamentally it wasn't all bad, right? The way that I went about implementing, because like most young engineers, you understand how to program an Arduino, a Raspberry Pi, and in your brain, you're like, I know how to make this work one-off, therefore it will scale, right? That fundamental understanding, I completely missed the boat on, no pun intended, right? Where it's like, I can build this thing, I can make this thing work, so it's going to be a real world product, right? I think that's more of a conceptual level thing where there's ways I think that young entrepreneurs, or not even young, just any entrepreneurs, right, can go about building something that's at first an open source product, which is where I think one of our key competitors did it right in a lot of ways. They offered a kit which circumvented so many restrictions and regulations that you have to follow with any consumer product, especially one that has lithium-ion batteries, electronics, right? Like all these different pieces you have to put together. So if I were to do something different from the technology standpoint, I would have built out in the open a lot more, because if we're being honest with ourselves, anything that we can build, there's a likely chance someone else can build too, unless it's some incredibly bleeding edge tech that only, Sam Altman can do in OpenAI, right? Those sorts of things. So build out in the open, right? Make a lot of things open source, right? Make it a kit at first. See if people, like your early adopters, who will likely be the ones that are willing to put that thing together, see if they want this, right? And then use that as a springing off platform to build the fully ready consumer product, which again, one of our competitors did, and they're still in some way, shape, or form in existence today. It's kind of shifted and morphed and all that sort of stuff, but they actually did it, and I think they did it really responsibly. And the last thing I'd say there too is just crawl before you walk before you run, right? And you know where I'm getting at there too, where it's like you try to boil the ocean and it's going to come back to bite you. So those are just a few things that really jump to the front of mind.
I love that. I mean, that's a master class right there. That's fantastic. The build and open, I think, is really interesting. I hadn't thought about that part of it, because something that we had going for us at the time was there was a community that wanted it. Like the Kickstarter campaign, very successful.
Yeah.
There's a mailing list that was engaged. People wanted to hear updates, but like, why not build in public? Why not invite other people in?
Yeah.
Tell your backers you have this problem.
Yeah.
And say, can you guys solve it? Because a lot of those early backers were people who were more technically inclined. They're engineers. Yeah, that's really interesting. That could have, and then also making it a kit to avoid the regulatory issues and all that. That would have been smart too.
But, I think the one thing I'll say that before we move on is, I think what drove a lot of that was a fear of looking like we didn't know what we were doing, which we absolutely did not know what we were doing, right? And it costs a lot of people a lot of money. And let's not shy away from the fact that Kickstarter is an experimentation platform that allows creators to fund their projects without seeking traditional capital investment, right? Yep. Which is a beautiful concept in principle, right? But unfortunately, the reason why I think we hit the sweet spot when we launched that product, because it was kind of the heyday of Kickstarter, the heyday of Indiegogo, right? When this was like everyone was doing one of these things. And so it was very much kind of out in the tech world zeitgeist of, hey, you just do a Kickstarter, right? I think when you do that, though, it's really intimidating because you now have, 10,000 backers breathing down your neck, and you want to look like you're a professional. It's like, dude, you just graduated from undergrad. You're not a professional. Don't shy away from the fact you have a lot of uncertainty, right? And I think people should know that before investing, which is the one redeeming factor of using something like Kickstarter. But I think, like you said, just don't shy away from like being like, hey, like we really want to like engage our community, because more often than not, even when you work at bigger tech companies as like a product manager, like I am now, get that feedback. Don't shy away from like being like, hey, you know what? I don't know the answer to this. No one has all the answers to this. Talk to people, right? And use that as a resource instead of something to fear, as you go through that process.
I love that. I see a lot of people who are afraid of just the imposter syndrome or being discovered for who they really are. It's like, well, if you've got to be proud of who you are. It will be endearing. People will be drawn to it. And if you're not proud of who you are, then I guess like take strides to change who you are if you can change it. But like if you're a 22-year-old building a tech startup, you can't change the fact that you're a 22-year-old, so just lean into it, right? Like you're bringing new ideas to the market. You can be humble and you can say, there's some things I don't know. I'm going to surround myself with senior leadership who's been there before, all those things, and invite the mass in to share their wisdom. So I think a lot of people just miss the mark on that, and they try to embellish or be someone that they're not, and then it backfires. And then there's a stress because you're just acting incongruent with yourself. So well, that's all I want to talk about. The Fathom drone for right now.
I love it.
But now I want to switch gears. I actually have a gift for you. This was a $5 purchase at Five Below yesterday.
What is this?
I saw the shirt, and you're the only person in the world I could think of who can pull it off.
You are now witnessing greatness.
Yeah.
Just my heart.
Yeah, you're the only.
I love it.
Only one with the ego and ability to back it up. So.
I love it. That's high praise. I mean, I will do my best to wear this in your honor.
Thank you. Yeah, or throw it away. It doesn't matter. It was a $5 shirt.
I'm keeping this. I'm sleeping in this shirt, by the way.
Nice. Yeah, that's another parenting tip. Hold on to all your old shirts that you're not going to wear anymore, because your kids will love wearing them. So
the beat down tees. Yeah. I don't want to give those up. I love wearing those still.
Yeah. Awesome, man. So we covered some of the things that you've made. I'm going to take a little break here. I have some more questions for you, but I'm going to take a break to invite Evan into the mix. So before we jump into different topics or anything, you have anything you'd like to ask Mr. John Boss? It's okay if you don't.
Ask. I'm just kind of taking it all in right now.
It's a lot to take.
Put on the spot. Yeah,
put me on the spot. Only asked a couple questions there. So.
All right, I'll keep going.
Yeah, come back to me though.
Okay.
Definitely come back.
Let it simmer.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got family life, engineer, Fathom drones, right? So, and I already heard a little bit about the Fathom drones in a
he met
Venture
Matt.
Unscripted. So.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he
nice.
He met Matt, so he knows some of that. So now you have 2 data points. You can kind of
start to see, exactly, get a better picture of it. Yeah, exactly. I love it.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll switch gears slightly. So now you are product manager at one of the biggest companies in the world. Very different than being building a strappy startup right out of college.
Yeah.
I still want to keep this on an entrepreneurial lens or take. So I'm curious, what do you think has made you a stronger entrepreneur, stronger creator, maker, now that you've gone to a large organization that you're in? What how's that informed you, changed you? Curious.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's funny to look at it that way too, where it's like you go from a 3-person, 4-person startup to a company with over 100,000 people in it, right? I think, as a lot of people talk about, number one misconception is that you can't be an entrepreneur in a large company like that. Taking those roots to a larger company hopefully has provided a really refreshing point of view for a lot of my colleagues there. Seeing, hey, questioning the status quo of why we do things the way we do, right? And so I think what's interesting though, once you go to a larger organization, one of the biggest learnings I guess I've had is like how you can manage resources if you actually have them, right? Like, hey, maybe I don't need to do everything myself, right? Maybe if, as an entrepreneur, maybe I can bring out a teammate to help me do this thing, because I think as creators and entrepreneurs, our default kind of frame of mind is like, I'm going to learn how to do everything myself, and I'm going to do it great, and I'm going to cover everything, right? And which is great. It helps you get off the ground. And like you said, I mean, I love and I pride myself in doing that a lot at my work and my side projects, all these sorts of things. But that's probably the thing I've learned most going to larger organizations. Like, hey, if you set up your own organization wisely and you have resources available, it can be a great force multiplier, right? And so that was actually a big learning that I had to take on too as I went to a larger company, was like, hey, I'm used to doing everything myself. Now, how do I leverage my team? How do we hire a team that helps us achieve this vision that we want? And it's no longer completely in my control, right? Because like that is the one thing that I think a lot of entrepreneurs get away with, that it's easier than working at a bigger company where like everything is within your direct control, right? It's really hard to let go of that direct creative vision that you have and bring other people into that circle of trust, right? So even in a large organization, that was one of my biggest learnings, is like, how do I do that? How do I let people in? How do I not be totally overbearing? And like, as you know, I'm a very passionate person. How do I not like drive people away with that? Because I never want to be that person that's always like, oh yeah, we got to go out of pure excitement, not because I want to be a slave driver to them or anything, but that was one of the biggest things I think was hard for me to learn coming into a big organization.
Yeah. Do you have any tricks that you can share for influencing other people and ratifying that vision with them? Because you said you learned how to do this, or you learned that you need to do it. So you're probably not perfect at it yet, but is there anything that has worked for you? Any shifts that you've made that you could share?
Totally. Yeah. Like you said, still very much learning in all possible ways how to be better at this. But as a product manager, that is your whole job, right? Is influencing other people that you don't have direct, I guess kind of management duties over, right? And I guess the two biggest things that I've taken away from how to maybe do this a little bit more effectively is A, repetition, and B, making people think it's their idea, right? And this is, again, like pretty, I think, common wisdom where, if I go in and I have to propose this new product vision, this new product strategy for how we're going to do something that goes against that kind of plan of record, right? How do you get people on board, right? First of all, bring data. Yeah. Just always bring data, right? And so like, once you have that data that informs that product strategy, you should have a solid foundation to kind of hopefully, protect that hypothesis that you have about why you need to make that change. And then repeat it, right? And repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and talk about it so everyone knows exactly where you stand, right? And then one little thing that's kind of funny, I don't know, this is something I find myself doing. It actually started as more like a vocal tick than anything, where I would be talking about something and I'd propose one of my ideas, and then someone would kind of repeat that idea that I said back. And then later in the conversation, I say like, yeah, so like you said about this idea, let's look at this way that we can do things, right? Like you said, right? Nice. Even though it sounds kind of devious.
That's
but
dirty.
It's kind of devious, but it's actually one of those things where it's like, not only does it help people, make people think like, oh yeah, maybe this was my idea after all, but it's also a way that they can feel heard. Yeah. Where it's like you call them out and be like, hey, you know what? Like you said, this was a great idea. Like let's talk about this a bit more. Like, why didn't you agree with this idea, right? And then come to a true compromise on that. So those are just a few things that I think, in a larger organization where you don't have that direct control, you have to get really good at. So
yeah, one of my previous colleagues just always used the term shared understanding. And I think when you get someone else saying in their own words, whatever you guys just talked about, whatever concept you are trying to relay, then you can confirm the shared understanding. It's not enough to say, do you understand? Do you agree? It's like, all right, can you echo back to me what you're hearing, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and just make sure that like they're using the same language and that it really is shared. Do you As you're making this shift in your career, are you turning to any specific resources? Are there any people that are influencing you? Any books that you're reading? Anything like that?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things, I guess, that I'm kind of looking at right now. I mean, the general resources that most people use online, whether it just be industry news, Medium, I still think is a great resource. You know, there's just a lot of thought pieces on there. Of course, do your research. Make sure that the person you're reading is reputable in some way too. They maybe have a background that aligns with, you know, what you're doing as well. Always kind of vet that. But in terms of like books, I've actually just gotten back, less so actually podcasts, more into audiobooks again. I've kind of done this like back and forth of like read the actual book, listen to a podcast, listen to an audiobook. I'm actually back on like the audiobook train right now. So like as I'm doing something else, I can kind of listen to that as well. So there's, I guess, a few, you know, reads there, which I've read before and had to revisit, which was, you know, like, what's the name of it? Let me look it up really quick.
Yeah,
it's on my phone. It's one that I think it's a pretty old read for a lot of folks, but one that actually I as a PM always need to remind myself: Measure What Matters. John Doerr. So you know, legendary, you know, Valley investor, and he just kind of goes through like how like the OKR framework was developed. And for me recently, that was actually really helpful because, again, this is a pretty well-known read among a lot of tech folks, but like looking at, okay, how can I quantify everything that we're doing, right? And like, how can I set expectations properly too? Because as I've kind of come into a more, you know, senior role at my current organization too, it's like, how do you make sure that people's expectations are set for how their performance is going to be judged as well, right? Because that's one of the biggest things that, you know, I always hate to see is like when you do like a performance review and someone gives like a bad performance review and it's like what the heck? I thought I did everything that I was supposed to do, right? It's like, okay, unless you have some sort of quantifiable, you know, objectives that you're working against, it's really hard to justify you giving bad feedback too. So recently for me, that was actually just a very topical read or listen in my case. So
yeah, I don't have time to actually read. I'd listen to everything now. Although I do find that my brain is working better when I sit down and actually read through things. There are more coherent thoughts that come out of it. But I've also been doing book summaries lately.
Yeah.
So that's on my drive in here today. I was doing book summaries, and
I love those.
That's nice. And then I can decide if I want to go spend more time with that book.
Yeah. It's a great strategy.
I'm going to shift gears again. But before I do you... since we're talking about your role as product manager, I don't know how much you can talk about. Do you want to say what you're doing? Because, I mean, you're doing cool stuff, but do you want to talk about it or no?
Yeah. So I mean, I think I can just leave it at saying, you know, I work as a senior PM for one of the biggest automakers, you know, in the world. And I work on, of course, anyone can see my LinkedIn. It's not a secret, of course. None of my views are reflective of that of the company, right?
Yep.
So I always have to say that. But I think what's been really fun about working for a big three OEM, right? Especially as we start to make this transition to the connected vehicle, right? And the software-defined vehicle. I could talk about this for hours, right? Which we can save for another time too. But you know, moving to a role, working this kind of new space where we actually see so much talent coming from the classic, like, you know, big FANG companies to these companies that, quite frankly, no one would have taken a second look at 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? It's kind of become the new Wild West for like innovation in a lot of ways. And I guess all I'll say about we don't have to linger on it if you don't want to, but the cool thing about being a PM and working in tech in the automotive space now is, imagine you're building a software product, but you also have control of the user's entire environment, right? Their sense of sight, their smell, what they feel, right? Like the screens they see in the vehicle, right? There are just so many possibilities, like unlimited possibilities as to how we can build amazing products. And that's actually one of the biggest challenges that our teams are taking on right now is, how do you deliver true value in the form of a service, of a software service to an automotive customer, right? Because I think it goes without saying, no one wants to pay a subscription for heated seats, BMW. But, you know, in our case, it's like, how do you actually drive true value, to customers through these sorts of services. So that is a really interesting problem space that I'm working in right now that I'm just incredibly passionate about at the moment.
Awesome. I have a few more questions for you. Before I get to that, anything else that you want to talk about today? Anything you want captured? Anything you want to dive into?
Not necessarily. No, I think we can just keep plugging along. If anything comes to mind, I'll let you know.
Sounds good. So now I'm getting personal with you here.
Do it.
Introspective. If you had to describe yourself in your own words, who is John Boss?
Oh, yeah. Wow. Deep.
What's a 30-second pitch on John Boss?
30-second pitch on me. It's funny you ask this because this is actually something that I've been like trying to be more introspective about lately. I think, when I try to describe myself, it's like, someone who tries to be passionate about everything that they do. Obviously, like you said, a builder, now a father has become a brand new part of that identity that I'm trying to wrap my arms around, right? So I think, it's just someone who like needs to like do important things in the world, right? I have this like, it's sometimes even kind of, I feel like it's almost toxic, right? Where I'm like, I need to do things that I think are important, right? And so build things that are important, make relationships with people I feel are very important, like you, for example, right? I think you are very, important person in this community and like what you're trying to do with your kind of entrepreneurial journey as well. So I think that it's been hard for me to like define that though, because like, I think I also fear a lot of like commitment to one identity, right?
Yeah.
Which I think has led me to kind of like not really understand in a lot of ways who I am, So it's hard for me to answer, but I think, the classic answers: husband, father, builder, outdoors lover. It sounds so cliche, but it's true, like I think there was like this moment, not to go on a tangent, but like, I think, when I'm feeling really stressed about like these sorts of questions, even when I ask myself, it's like when I go out in nature and it's like, you should just be in awe at something, right? Like that kind of brings me down a level. I'm like, okay, like it's okay. You don't need to have everything figured out. So I think I'm still asking myself that in a lot of ways, but you have to kind of come up with a good answer for you, I think.
No, that was great. Everything you said, I see in you as well. So there was nothing that was, off or incongruent there.
Oh.
I would say like early on, all those years ago when we first met, I was immediately drawn to you because I could tell you're someone, obviously you're very capable, obviously very smart, charismatic. You got a lot of good things going for you, but I could tell that you were on a mission to do something that matters. Like whenever you're done with this world, there will be something significant that happened because of you. And so I want to stay around you. I want to and see what you do. I know this is it's a tough season for you because you've got a little one and you're just like wrapping your head around your arms around all of that. And you're doing important things at your day job and you have all these other ambitions. So I'm curious to see where you are just a few years from now and I want to see what happens next. So I'm going to keep checking in on you on what, who is John Boss and
hey, and honestly, I love these sorts of questions because it forces me to be more introspective because I find myself constantly thinking outwardly, right? Which, I think like you're the same way where like you're constantly looking for cool problems to solve and you're constantly looking for like how to connect with people and how to be a better father, husband, whatever it might be, right? And so infrequently do I just stop and say like, okay, like what do I really want? What do I really care about, right? And how do I abstract away from like working in consumer electronics or automotive or one of these things and like, why do I do what I do, right? It's like you said, it's because like we want to do important things. And I think everyone wants that too, right? In their own way. I think to say like, if someone doesn't want to build a world-changing piece of technology, it doesn't mean that they lack ambition. It just means that they have a different value set, whereas, I just happen to be one of those people where I'm like, I want it to be big and bold and like, and world-changing, right? And so that's really what I think I'm working towards, while also, like you said, managing all the other aspects of life that are just as equally important, So yeah, ask me again in a few months and we'll see where it goes.
I will. Can I project something else onto you here?
Please.
That you can disagree if with it if you want. But I also see you as someone who understands the world through building, through making something and turning it into reality. Because in the 2020 timeframe, that like cracked a lot of people, and they all like everyone was just suddenly trying to like make sense of the world around them, and they all went to their different coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
For me, my coping mechanism is starting a business.
Oh yeah.
When in stress, when in doubt, I just start a business.
I see
just
that,
my mind just
100%.
goes there. I'm like, oh shoot, this is a coping mechanism.
Yes.
But for you, I think it's making something. Like you literally, like you made a physical product, and you saw all these people having problems and issues. Like you made a physical product. You can talk about it if you want or not, but like I don't know if you agree with that or like how you feel after hearing that. But like that's something that I see in you is you make sense of the world through making things.
I think you're spot on, and I mean I think that's just like you said, the way I cope, the way I understand the world, the way I solve problems in different ways, like and I think that's a great example too, where like and just to give some background on what you mentioned there, when peak of the pandemic was kicking off, right, and my wife is a nurse, right, she was working in a big metro hospital downtown Denver where it was just like, it was chaos, right? And they're being asked to re-wear their, masks over and over and over. And like, these are paper masks. They're meant to be worn once, right? Because there's a shortage of everything, right? The world was kind of coming down. And so, like, that's a great example though, where it's like, okay, problem statement. My wife has to reuse her mask, and she shouldn't have to, right? She should have a, recyclable, reusable mask that she can swap that filter material on, right? And it's cleanable, these sorts of things. So yeah, just like made a new type of custom fitting, like N95 style mask, right? Out of things that just were lying around. And so, and it was kind of funny because like I never posted on YouTube before, but it's like, I feel like other people should just know about this, right? 0 followers, 0 anything. I'd like literally create an account just to post this video of how to make this mask, and it hit like 100,000 views in like a day. It was like, oh my gosh, like people need this thing, right? So, but all that to say, I agree with you though, and I agree with the sentiment about yourself too, which like the thing I respect about you is that like you're always looking at, okay, like how can I create something to serve this need, right? This business to serve this need, or to express my own creativity, right? Some people draw, some people write music. Bryce creates businesses, right? You write executive summaries. So I think I respect that a lot about you as well.
Yeah, I can't sing, can't draw, can't play an instrument. That many things.
You know your niche.
Yeah, I messed up. One of the things I was going to do today, but I ran out of time, was I was going to bring a graveyard of things that you had made that I have, because I have. I still have the mold from your mask making thing. Yes. I have the test rig from Fathom drone. I was going to bring that because I thought you'd care more to see that than the actual.
Oh, that's
finished
amazing!
product.
Yes, you still have that. That's amazing.
I still have it. Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to when my son's just a little bit older. I'm going to tinker with it with him. Yes, because he seems to have interest in electronics engineering. So
I love that.
I'm excited about it. Yeah. But you've made a lot of awesome things, and I know you're going to keep making some really great things. I guess one last question, and I'm going to throw it over to Evan. So you better have your question this time, Evan. Just kidding.
No pressure.
Did you make anything for your son when your wife was pregnant? I just have to. I feel like you probably made something. You 3D printed something. There's some gizmo gadget. There's a toy you made for your kid. There's something in the nursery. Did you make something, or are you in the process of making something?
Oh, I have a lot of ideas. No, so it's funny because I didn't make anything, but I have this. So in addition to making things, I do actually really enjoy drawing. Like I love just pencil sketching, right? So what I try to do is like every like milestone, anniversary, whatever it was leading up to that, just sketching something for my wife, right? And just like not very complex, but just like these little things where it's like, hey, I didn't just like buy something for you. Like I made this for you, right? Like I took this time, and it takes creativity. And even those small things, even though like I have not made him something, right? I renovated our house for him, but but maybe that's what I did for him. But I mean, just like those little things, right, leading up to that just kind of say like, you know what, like it's just a little bit of above and beyond. Like you didn't need to make this thing for me, but But that's what I love to do. So I'm actually really excited about that. I'm glad you brought that up because like I have a lot of plans for things I'm going to make with that little guy and for that little guy. So stay tuned. I'll have more details soon.
I look forward to that. All right, Evan, it's come to you. It's your time in the show.
All right. I was thinking, you say you get excited about things really easily and really quickly, and it's all you think about. It's kind of a two-parter where I'm kind of similar in that, but then I kind of forget about that thing within a couple days. Are you someone who like, are they little things that like you can see to fruition within a week that you get excited about and then you're on to the next thing? Or is it something that like you're real excited about it and then it kind of fades into the background?
Fizzles out? That's a really good question. Yeah. So unfortunately, it's a mix of small and big things, right? So it's like, hey, so for example, like I'm working with a prosthetist at Mary Free Bed to like print fairings for like kids' prosthetics, right? So that they're not just like an ugly bar, like, hey, this doesn't look cool. Like this looks kind of clunky, right? It's like, that's a little thing that I get super passionate about. It's like, hey, let's 3D print like a cover for that thing that's artistic and it expresses who you are, right? So like that's a small thing that I can see to fruition where I can just design it in a weekend, send it along. They can fit it up and be like, yeah, like, okay, this is great. Or I need to work on it some more. Some bigger things like, hey, my buddy out in Hermosa Beach, like he had a problem. Like it was a pain in the butt, like setting up volleyball lines every time. So I'm like, let's design like a little system that just like pops out immediately. So like you have a volleyball court ready to go, like beach volleyball, whenever you want it. And it fits in a backpack, right? So that's something that's like still ongoing. Other things that's even bigger, it's like, hey, with the onset of generative AI, right? Everyone loves to talk about AI. And it's like, okay, those sorts of things where it's like, there's some really cool things we can do with this, but is it actually improving anyone's life, right? Like, how can I build something that's going to actually improve the quality of our lives or my relationship with my wife or something like that? So that's a much longer term thing that I still can't get out of my mind. So I think the problem is, Evan, is that these things don't fizzle out for me unless I finish them. They stick in the back of my mind until I finish them. And then I can say like, okay, on to the next thing,
Do you have a system of keeping those things in your mind and constantly kind of bringing them up every so often?
You should see my laptop folder structure. That's how I keep things away.
Okay, yeah.
So that's a really good question. So I think because I'm a product manager by profession, prioritization is my day in and day out, right? It's my bread and butter. So I always look at like, what do I care about most right now, right? And why do I care about it, right? What's my effort versus value matrix and what can I tackle first, right? It sounds funny, but like that's actually how I think about things. It's how I think about putting away the dishes at night. It's stupid, right? But like that's how I like function to prioritize, like you said, all these different wacky ideas that are flying around my mind. So I think just looking at that, right? Like, what am I passionate about right now? Like, do I need to see this through right now? Or can I let this sit a little bit because there's something else that I'm super passionate about? Or like, I need to do something for my wife or my son or something like that. So, just like prioritization is like how I manage those things in my mind and a chaotic folder structure on my laptop. So
nice. I want to add to that because what people won't understand unless they spend a lot of time with you is how capable you are at especially making a single thing or a prototype. So John will cover a lot of ground really quick. Like it's not like just a doodle. It's like the next day there is a physical working thing. So he doesn't have to spend months on something because he can cover that ground so much quicker. And then what you called out earlier, the distinction between like making one of something or then bringing it to mass production, like there's a gap there. But it's crazy. I can't like leave you alone with an idea for a week because you're going to come back with just something that's already built. It's like,
so this is why I also like love working with Bryce though too, is because like he's also very much an ideas guy, right? So like we talk about the quote unquote ideas guy, and like I love to come up with ideas too, but I also love to execute, right? Like I love to build that thing, and so like when Bryce floats a random idea, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is a good idea, and then the cycle begins. Like you said, it's like, okay, what am I working on right now? Is like, do I want to work on this instead? And so. No, but I appreciate that. I think it is just fun though, because the reason why I'm so excited about where we are right now with a lot of technology and things is because other people like me have unprecedented access to be able to make things, right? You know, if we grew up in the previous generation, 3D printing was not a thing to build physical products. Having easy access to Arduinos and Raspberry Pis, and now I can, you know, tap into one of the most powerful large language models on earth with an API I signed up for last, you know, weekend, right? So that opportunity has never been better, you know, so that's why I'm also so excited about other people, you know, being able to make cool stuff too.
Cool. Anything else, Evan? No? Good. All right.
No, I answered all my questions.
Sweet. All right. Well, we're going to let you get out of here, John. Thanks for stopping by. This was fun. I hope we get to figure out a way to do a whole series of things, but this was great.
Oh, no, thanks for having me. This was a ton of fun. I look forward to talking more in the future.
Awesome. All right. Play the outro music, Evan.
There's outro music?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know if there's outro music.
Oh, it's an intro.
Oh,
Okay.
it's the same as the intro.
That's what
I'm gonna
all
keep hopping
podcasts
on
do, right?
Bryce until he decides to pick one.
Yes.
I've told him every week he needs to pick a song.
I love it. I love it.
He has yet to do it.
I just want Evan to solve all my problems.
If you tell me to, I'll pick one. If you want me to pick
Okay.
one.
All right.
Just
Deal.
creative license to just choose whatever, right?
I have complete faith. All right. Oh, thanks, guys.